So suppose we are looking at the utility of a home pregnancy test. The test checks for the presence of the hormone human chorionic gonadotropin. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, the HCG. The HCG hormone is usually only present in urine if a woman is pregnant. The following table represents the outcomes for 514 women who took a pregnancy test. All right, so we want to find the false positive rate, the specificity, the false negative rate, the sensitivity, and then we can decide whether or not we think it's a good test. All right, so false positive rate. Let's start with that. Our false positive rate is the number of people who test positive or who test as pregnant but aren't really pregnant over the number of people who aren't pregnant. All right, so the number of people who test as pregnant but aren't really pregnant. Now let's notice right here, home pregnancy conclusion. Here are the people who tested as pregnant. If we go across, 6 of them were actually not pregnant. So the top of our false positive is a 6. All right, so 6 on top. And we want to put that over the number of people who are not pregnant. Now, if we look at actual condition, here's the people who are not pregnant. There are 341 women who are not pregnant. And if we put that in our calculator, we get a false positive rate of 0.01, or we can 18. And we could change that into 1.8% if we wanted to. All right, now the specificity is 1 minus the false positive rate. All right, so 1 minus 0.018 is going to give us 0.982. Now, we could also get the specificity by taking the number of people who tested as not pregnant and are not pregnant and putting it over the number of people who are not pregnant. All right, false negative rate. We get our false negative by taking the number of people who tested as not pregnant but who really are pregnant on top over the number of people who are pregnant. All right, so let's look at the top first. We want to find the number of people who tested as not pregnant, but who really are pregnant. So if we look at the people who tested as not pregnant, that is this row right here. Among those people who tested as not pregnant, 84 of them actually are pregnant. So that's the top of that fraction. So for number 3, we'll have 84 over. All right, now on the bottom, we want the people who are actually pregnant. All of the people who are actually pregnant. Well, here is our actual condition. If we look down at pregnants, the total number of people who are actually pregnant is 173. If we put that into our calculator as a decimal, that comes as 0.486. Now, sensitivity we can get by saying 1 minus the false negative rate. So we can go 1 minus 0.486, and that gives us 0.514. Now, we can also get sensitivity by finding the number of people who are pregnant or who tested pregnant and actually are pregnant and putting it over the number of people who actually are pregnant. Okay, so the last question is really an opinionated one, whether or not you think this is a good test. All right, so it gives you a false positive. In other words, it tells you that you are pregnant when you really aren't pregnant only about 2% of the time. If if we move our decimal there, 1.8%. All right. It tells us that we are not pregnant when in fact we are pregnant about 48, 49% of the time. It tells us that we are not pregnant when we are not pregnant about 98% of the time. Okay, so that's good if you're looking for that negative. And then it tells us that we're pregnant when we are in fact pregnant about 51% of the time. So this really depends upon how you think about this. Whether or not you think getting a false negative rate of 48%, well, that's pretty high. You may think that you're not pregnant, and you may go out and do all kinds of exercises you shouldn't do. So you may say, okay, that doesn't seem like a good test because I may be putting the child in danger when in fact I'm pregnant, and it told me that I was not pregnant. So you might think it's a bad test because of that. On the other hand, you might think that the sensitivity here is not high enough, that it's not telling people they're pregnant when they actually are pregnant well enough. You might want that to be higher. So that's an opinionated answer to that question, kind of depending upon how you feel about false negatives and about it testing you as positive when in fact you really are pregnant. Now, these are sort of things that balance out. So, you know, if we have these right here go down for false negative, then we might see that one of these goes up. The false positive rate might go up. If we see this one go up, we'll see this one go down. So there is sort of a checks and balances among our false positives and false negatives in our specificity and our sensitivity.